Hello Internet, it's Seth Skorkowski, and today we're going to discuss a Call of Cthulhu scenario that is very near and dear to my heart, and that is A Mother's Love, published by Stygian Fox in 2020 for their new tales in the Miskatonic Valley 2nd edition collection. The collection went on to win the 2020 Gold ENnie Award for Best Electronic Book, but what makes this scenario special is that it was written by me. Yeah, this is my debut published adventure. And this is my ENnie Award for it. Wait, you're gonna review your own adventure? Yeah, that seems a bit sketchy to me. Sort of a conflict of interest. No, this isn't a review exactly. More like an overview for this scenario, as well as some extra tidbits and tips and suggestions for running it. Several years ago, back when they were doing the original Kickstarter for the book, I announced that Stygian Fox asked me to write an adventure for it that was set in the town of Innsmouth. Now, Shadow over Innsmouth is my favorite of Lovecraft stories, and I was excited to do a scenario that was set in that legendary town. Fun fact, the BBC Radio 4 performance read by Richard Coyle is my favorite rendition of this story. I highly recommend it. The adventure is a manhunt. A gang of dangerous bank robbers have fled to shadowed Innsmouth. The investigators team up with local law enforcement to catch these fugitives before they can escape. Now, among the stipulations for the adventure was that first, it had to be consistently canon with Chaosium's other Innsmouth material. I couldn't go against any of that, but that did allow me to use a lot of great NPCs from those adventures, allowing for a consistent cast of Innsmouth locals between all of them. And the other stipulation was that I was limited to 8,000 words, which is a lot less words than it initially sounds. In the end, it came to 15 pages and just a hair over 8,000 words, but there could have been a lot more to it. So in addition to tips and suggestions about running what's between the pages of the adventure, I want to give a couple extra little tips of just different stuff that we weren't able to fit inside of it just due to the word count. And I'm Jack the NPC. I'm here to recreate some of the more memorable moments in our multiple playthroughs of this scenario, as well as celebrate my debut as a character in a published scenario. There I am. Ooh, I'm a Fed. Nice. But before we go any further, I must warn you that there will be spoilers. Big, sexy spoilers. So any players in the audience, please stop now. But send your Game Master this way for tips on running this adventure for you. But if you keep going and you spoil yourself, your shame will haunt you for the rest of your years. Okay, Keepers, let's do this. I've been looking forward to this one for a long time. But first, the backstory. 80 years ago, the coastal town of Innsmouth was taken over by the esoteric order of Dagon, a cult of deep ones wishing to breed with humans. Those who resisted were slaughtered over the course of one terrible night, leaving only the faithful or those too frightened to resist. The hybrid offspring of these unions are born looking normal, but as they age, they begin to transform, losing their hair and their eyes begin to bulge into what calls the Innsmouth look. Over the years, Innsmouth has degraded into a shadow of its former glory, with many of the buildings abandoned and now rotting. It no longer appears on any road maps, and the residents of nearby towns know to best avoid Innsmouth. Okay, so that is Innsmouth from the Lovecraft story. Once again, I do suggest that you check that one out. Anyway, 20 years ago, there was an Innsmouth child named Tobias Sisk who hated Innsmouth, and one day he discovered a passage that was beneath an abandoned warehouse. Going down that passage, he discovered a grotto that had a strange bell hanging from the ceiling and descending into the water. After hitting the bell, some deep ones swam up the caverns to investigate what caused it, and one of them was Tobias's mother, Mary Sisk. Over the years, he visited this cave many times, calling his mother, who listened to his joys and his frustrations of growing up in this decrepit town. She gave him a bracelet telling him to hide it, and that one day, when he got older, its power would protect him. Then, 10 years later, Tobias and his best friend went off to go fight in the Great War. His friend died, but Tobias, having finally escaped Innsmouth once the war was over, decided not to return home, but went off to Chicago where he began a life of crime. He formed a gang of notorious bank robbers, but as he grew older, the deep one blood inside of him awoke, beginning his transformation and the undeniable urge to return home to his mother's side. So he's taken his gang on the road and headed to Innsmouth. The scenario begins in 1927, only 3 months before Lovecraft's story occurs. After a bank robbery and a shootout in Ipswich, the gang was last seen fleeing up the road to Innsmouth. Holy crap, enough of this novel of a backstory. Can we get to the adventure now? The scenario is ideal if the investigators are with the Bureau of Investigation, who is leading this manhunt. Now, the new Tales of the Miskatonic Valley collection comes with 6 pre-generated characters that could be used with any of the adventures in there. However, none of those are federal agents. Now, when I playtested this adventure multiple times, these were the characters that I used for those games, so I've stuck a link below if you want to download these and use them for yourself. Feel free to change them up or draw inspiration from them and make up your own. Whatever you like, just have fun with them. If you're going to be playing the federal agents, the scenario opens up in Boston as the player characters are called to meet with their supervisor, Agent Jack Malone. Holy crap, this is my favorite part. I can't believe you put me in the adventure. And oh, hey, shouldn't be drinking if I'm a Fed. Jack informs them of the robbery and of the gang. We get these 2 handouts. Fun fact, every member of the gang shares a surname with one of my players, which I'm sure is a completely random coincidence. Jack orders the investigators to go to Innsmouth and find these robbers. State police have blocked off every road leading to the town, so their job is to go in, work with the Innsmouth constabulary, and capture this gang. He tells them that they've already reserved rooms at the Gilman House Hotel and demands that they call him every night to report their progress. Now, if you don't want to use the federal agent angle when you run this adventure, there can be other ways of doing this. The investigators might be journalists or wanting to get a scoop on the gang's capture. Or they could be bounty hunters that are seeking rewards on all the different gang members. Or they could be private detectives that have been hired by one of the gang's former victims, either to bring them to justice or maybe recover some sort of item that might have been stolen from them. However, if you do a different route, not do with the federal investigator route, a couple things that you're going to want to consider with that. First, they're going to need a local guide. The people of Innsmouth are very untrusting of outsiders, and they're not going to talk to any outsiders. So have an NPC local that can serve as their guide and kind of allow the locals to talk to the PCs, because the locals know that they're with so-and-so. That means they're probably good and they should be able to talk to them. Now, Constable Birch might volunteer to do this under the guise that they might need his protection and these dangerous criminals about. Or you can just have a local NPC sort of join the party to help them out, such as Grace Deckard might offer to help here. Now, the reason that the locals and the Cult of Dagon is going to try to get somebody to accompany the PCs as a guide isn't just to help them find these criminals and get all these people out of town and all this attention out of town, because nobody in Innsmouth likes the fact that everybody is looking at Innsmouth because these bank robbers are here, but it's also to keep an eye on the player characters to make sure that they don't learn too much of Innsmouth's secrets. So if they do play feds, the Innsmouth police, once again Constable Birch most likely, is going to serve this role. But if you're not going to have them play federal officers, you're going to need to have some local NPC sort of work themselves into the group to serve as their guide. Next, if you're not going to be doing federal agents, have the player characters still have to make nightly calls to somebody, such as their boss, like a newspaper editor that's wanting to get updates, or if they're detectives, their client is calling them for updates, or it could just be a worried spouse, wanting to make sure that the PC is safe with all these dangerous criminals about. Now, the reason is, if it's their boss, why you want to do that is they can then prompt the investigators along if they're stuck or they're stalling in the investigation, sort of keep the game moving. So every night they call, say, hey, what did you do? And the PCs have to say, well, this is what we did today. Well, what are you doing tomorrow? The PCs have to say what they're going to do tomorrow. And if they don't have an answer, that NPC boss on the phone can be like, okay, well, tomorrow you should look at doing that. And that can keep the game back on course. But the other reason that you want to have the phone call every night is because all the phones in Innsmouth are being listened to by the city operator, who is a cultist, and she hears everything going on with them. And if she finds out that they're about to reveal some sort of secret to the other person on the other end of the line, she's just going to cancel that phone call and apologize that they're having technical difficulties, and then she's going to notify the Cult of Dagon that somebody has too much information and they need to be dealt with. On the road to Innsmouth, they might spot the gang's stashed car that broke down after the shootout in Ipswich. Now, if they miss the car, it's no big deal. The state police will discover it an hour or two after the PCs arrive in Innsmouth, and then the PCs can go back out to the road and check that out. They'll also discover some estranged web cobweb footprints and some strange smell around it. The police dogs are going to start acting up once they get around the smell, and then they're going to start acting up once they get to the town itself. Maybe the PCs, while they're kind of going through the different salt marsh, will encounter some strange, weird crab creatures that reside in places that deep ones live. Now, the adventure itself is a mood game, so selling the mood and the atmosphere for Innsmouth is essential in order to run this scenario effectively. There should be a growing sense of unease about this town and its population throughout the course of this adventure. The Innsmouth police, all of which appear in the Escape from Innsmouth book, can provide a lot of information about Sisk, about his family home, and who it was he spent time with when he lived there. Most notably was his childhood friend and former fiancée, Grace Deckard, who was jilted by Tobias when he never returned from the Great War. Grace has now become a respected priestess of Dagon, and she is pissed to learn that Tobias is still alive and has now returned to town, bringing all this unwanted attention and all these outsiders in along with him. Also, that one of his gang members happens to be his girlfriend when he was supposed to be engaged to her. And if you think she's stabbing mad now, wait till she finds out that her former fiancé's current girlfriend is pregnant. Yeah, I wouldn't want to be there when she finds that out. So Grace is going to eagerly offer to help the player characters find Tobias. However, she also plans on killing him and his girlfriend because she's pretty angry at them. And because she is a well-respected priestess of Dagon, all the local cops are going to allow her to do that unless the PCs can come up with a good argument why she shouldn't join them. The local cops are going to be like, yeah, sure, come along, let's find ourselves some killers. Now, one location that the player characters are most likely going to look into eventually is Tobias's now abandoned childhood home. There's no map that was given for this house. Stygian Fox evidently decided that they didn't have enough room for it or that it wasn't necessary, but this is the terribly crude map that I used when I ran this adventure during playtest, so feel free to use it. I stuck a link down below for it if anybody would like to have a copy. In the house, they're going to find two clues: a child's map leading to a pirate hangout and a child's picture of his family. Wow, either this kid is the world's worst artist, or he really didn't like his mama. Investigators that looked into Tobias's family history should know that his mother was reported to have died during childhood, and she really wasn't some hideous monster. Fun fact, when I turned this adventure into Stygian Fox, I gave him these concept pictures with a note saying that they should look like, a childhood drawing. Instead of a professionally drawn illustration for the adventure, they should look really crude and nasty and really shouldn't look that good at all. Well, evidently Stygian Fox thought that my talent was just terrible enough that they couldn't improve on it, so they just went ahead and used the pictures that I drew in this adventure. So you could put RPG Illustrator on your resume now. In case a client ever wants a picture that looks like it's drawn by an uneducated fish frog child, you're the guy for that job. Now, the pirate map is leading to the hideout that the gang is currently hiding in, but it's also terribly crude. Even if the player characters can identify which statue is the starting point, it's going to be difficult for the player characters to figure out exactly where this warehouse is based off this map alone. Now, this was the key that shows what the dotted path means. Again, this is in the download link below if you'd like to have access to it. Of course, if the player characters show this map to Grace, who is named among the pirate crew, she's going to remember the abandoned warehouse and she can lead the player characters there. Now, as I said, the adventure is a mood game as the player characters are exploring this decrepit town. Weird faces are going to peek out through different windows, conversations will silence once they enter a room. Game masters should capture a growing sense of wrongness that the player characters are not wanted here. Now, there are several events that might happen, strange sounds they might hear in the hotel, and there are 4 events that game masters can choose to sprinkle in whenever they like. Now, 2 of these are really only for mood, but the other 2 are for pushing the narrative forward. First, one of the state police officers that was assigned to be patrolling the docks, he's going to go missing. Now, the truth is that he saw something that he shouldn't have, and the cult of Dagon killed him, but the gang is going to get blamed for this because they're doing a manhunt for some killers, and all of a sudden a cop is missing. Of course the gang's who killed that cop. And maybe this adds a new level to the manhunt as the player characters are now searching the town trying to find out what happened to this missing police officer. Now, the second incident that pushes the narrative forward is that one of the gang members, Teddy Wynn, saw something while he was peering outside the hideout, and now he has gone insane. So he's going to steal his share of the money from the gang, and he's going to try to flee town. Now, you can have the confrontation with Teddy happen at any point during the adventure. Maybe it's just if the game is beginning to stall, or if you just want to inject a bit of excitement into it, because all of of a sudden there's going to be a fight with this guy. Now, both times that I ran this adventure, it worked out best that it happened right after the player characters had left Tobias's childhood home. You know, they had searched the house, they found those clues, and then bam, there's this guy who's trying to steal their car, and all of a sudden they have action in a shootout. But you can put that scene in it wherever you find best, or whenever it begins to stall, just go ahead and throw that out to add a little bit of excitement. If the investigators try to talk to Teddy, he's going to babble about there was monsters in the water and how Tobias is one of them too. Now, Teddy is either going to try to escape or he's just going to kill himself, meaning that he might say that Toby is one of them too, and then, eat his pistol or jump off of a building. He is never going to surrender to the player characters, and nothing is going to make him rat out the gang's location if they do manage to capture him, but he does confirm that the gang is still in town, so that at least is a hint that can push the narrative forward, as well as give some hints that Tobias might not be entirely human and there might be some sort of monsters in this town. Now, maybe the player characters will manage to take him alive. Maybe they're going to see him and go all murder hobo and just gun him down before they even ask him any information where they might be able to find the rest of the gang. Wait, so we could have talked to that guy before we gunned him down? Yeah, that makes a lot more sense. The gang is hiding out in one of the empty warehouses along the dock. Once again, the module didn't include a map for this building, but I do have a very crude one that you can download because this is the one we used during playtest. The front and back doors are padlocked shut, and the key has been lost for decades, so they're going to have to cut these locks off. Investigators might find a crawlway that's hidden behind a loose grate that they can use to crawl inside. Inside, one of the gang is up in the loft watching the outside from one of the two windows, one on either end. He has a Tommy gun, and if he sees the police massing outside, he's going to warn the others and just open fire on them. Inside is cluttered and dark with all these rotted boxes and barrels, and they might have a gunman that's shooting down on them from the loft up above. Meanwhile, Toby, who's been down in the grotto, has reclaimed his mother's bracelet, which allows him to cast the rack spell whenever he wants to, because it only works on somebody who's got active Deep One blood inside of him, and now he's old enough that the bracelet will work. But he's been afraid to sound the bell to call his mother because he's ashamed of what's all happened in his life and how he's brought all this bad stuff down on his hometown. Now, he's going to emerge from the trapdoor once the player characters arrive, but the moment that he's either been injured or he can see that all is lost and that he's going to lose this battle, he's going to run back down the trapdoor, run through the grotto, and hit that bell and summon his mother. Now, the firefight with this remaining gang should be intense and very claustrophobic. Any Innsmouth police that are with the player characters, or if Grace Deckard is with the player characters, they're going to join in the fighting too. They don't want to keep these people alive. These people are bringing all this attention down on their town. Now, during the playthroughs, Grace Deckard ended up taking out the gunman in the loft by using her Breath of the Deep spell. The PC that was accompanying her got hit, and he was knocked unconscious, and nobody could see what she was doing, and she decided to save her life, and nobody was going to watch her cast a spell, so she cast a spell and took that guy out. Now, the player characters never knew what happened. They just know that the shooting up above just kind of abruptly stopped, and then water started dripping down from the loft above, and there was some sort of faint gurgling noise that was kind of echoing in the darkness. That was a great scene. We snuck up those stairs all quiet-like, planning on ambushing him from behind. But when we got there, the dude is lying dead on the floor, drowned with water just pouring out of his mouth. Now, if Toby rang the bell, Mary Sisk is going to arrive to either avenge or protect her son. The first test group that played this managed to take out Tobias before he could ring that bell. But afterwards, the player characters are looking at it and they're thinking, yeah, that looks like a weird bell. We're going to ring it. But all the cops and Grace were there and they were all like, yeah, you shouldn't do that. It's got religious reasons. But the PCs, they were all like, yeah, whatever. We're going to ring that bell anyway. So they did. And that's when the bad thing happened. Now, if the player characters see Mary Sisk, if they see this Deep One that's come up to protect her son, all of the locals are going to instantly turn on the player characters. So not only does this monster come exploding up out of the water with this fury of an angry mother, and it's going to evoke saves of sanity, and she's going to start tearing into them with these huge claws, but then the friendly Innsmouth police that are standing right behind them are going to turn their shotguns on the player characters and just open up fire. Now, the Innsmouth police are going to cover this up, saying that any player characters that died, it was during the firefight with the bank robbers. Now, in my second playtest of this adventure, one of the characters characters was knocked out during the firefight. That was the one that was beside Grace when she took the guy out with her spell. Now, the rest of the PCs, they chased Tobias down into the grotto, but not before Mary was summoned, so then she shows up, she fights the PCs, all the cops fight the PCs, and all the player characters that went down in the grotto were killed. So the character that was knocked out, he wakes up a day later in the hospital as the only survivor of this manhunt for these bank robbers, and the cops are telling him that, they're now this hero and that they were able to save the day and they're the only survivor from this horrible fight that left all of their friends dead. But they were able to take out Tobias and they were managed to recover the money, so his job is done. That was a fun ending because the player who was sitting around the table, he knew perfectly well that something was going on here and all these people were involved in some sort of cover-up and conspiracy and that there were monsters everywhere. But the character had no idea. So when he gets in the car and he drives away as some sort of hero cop that solved the case, it had this perfect horror movie sort of fade to black. The character having no idea what went down, but the audience, they know that this ain't done yet. One of the big goals that I had when I wrote this adventure, outside of it being a fun adventure and that it fits in the world as well as being canonical with everything, is that it goes against what many Call of Cthulhu scenarios are normally like. In most scenarios, the goal is to uncover and learn more about the mythos and the supernatural. The characters might begin the adventure with some sort of other goal in mind, but then the adventure eventually transforms, so it's about the PCs, they have to discover this information to stop the mythos. However, in this adventure, the objective is to get the bank robbers and to get the money back. And while the mythos and supernatural entities are certainly all around them all the time, if the player characters lose focus of what their objective is and they look at everything that's around them, that's when the monsters might realize that they've been spotted, and that's when the player characters are most likely going to fail because they're probably not going to be able to survive this. So if they go into this weird place with all these weird events and all these weird people, and they just stick to the original objective, find these robbers and get that money back, and they don't stray at all from what their objective is, what they were told to come down to do, that's going to be their best chance for succeeding in the adventure. But if they try to metagame this adventure because they know they're playing Call of Cthulhu and they know they're in the famous town of Innsmouth and they think that what they're supposed to do is discover the dark truth about this place, yeah, they're probably not going to last that long. Now, two things that I didn't have room to put inside the adventure, but I think might be useful for any game masters out there. First, the gang might decide to leave the hideout. I'd say that after 5 days that they were hiding out in here, if the player characters have still not found the gang. Soto and Kameyer might just decide to flee the location and try to flee town, maybe steal a boat or steal a car if they've been there for more than 5 days. Now, Tobias is not going to leave town. This has been his goal the whole time, but the others might decide that this is a good time to make a break for it. I don't see that as likely happening, where it would take that long before the PCs were able to find them and the hideout was discovered, but game masters also might just want to go ahead and speed that up just to add a little bit of movement from the bad guys. So maybe they go out and they steal some food, they rob some house, they rob a store because they need to get some food. Or maybe they try to kidnap Dr. Marsh. Like maybe one of them was injured during the Ipswich robbery, so they go there either to raid his office for medical supplies, or they try to kidnap him to do some surgery and pull a bullet out of one of their friends. So while the bad guys have a pretty good reason to stay put where they are, game masters might want to give a little bit of movement to them. That way the player characters are going to have to investigate and follow up on all these sightings around town. Next is the baby. Pearl Kameyer is pregnant with Tobias's child. Now she's only beginning to show. She's only in the first few months of her pregnancy, and she will reveal this information to the player characters in order to save her own life. Don't shoot me, I'm pregnant, if the PCs, try to draw a bead on her. Now if she survives this adventure and they know about this, the people of Innsmouth should become very interested in this child. It has deep one blood after all, and it's likely going to start transforming once it becomes of age, so the cult of Dagon is going to try really hard to get this baby. Maybe have somebody adopt it, or maybe try to kidnap this child because this child's going to be one of them. So if you're going to be doing this as a one-shot, that's probably no big deal. It might be kind of a neat little story of what happens after the game ends, but it's probably nothing that you need to worry about. But if this adventure is going to be part of a much larger campaign, the child that was born from this, once it grows up and becomes a person, that might become a different story itself. As maybe there's a kidnapping, and then they discovered that the kidnapped child was actually the child that from that previous case that they did in Innsmouth, and that could be kind of fun to explore, to figure out, what's going on with this. I thought that case we did a long time ago was closed, but now Innsmouth just keeps coming back to haunt us. You can find the adventure as a PDF on DriveThruRPG. Physical editions can be purchased through the Stygian Fox website, but they're currently out of stock, so you can't buy them right now, so they're going to have to make a second print run of those. Hopefully it's going to be later this year if you want to pick up a physical copy of this book. This was a great opportunity to write this scenario, and I'm very grateful to Stygian Fox for offering this to me, and I really hope that players get to enjoy my own little contribution to both this game and this setting that I love very much. Oh yeah, but it's also led to some other projects since then, such as the recently released Mysteries in Arcturus Station for Traveler, which is a 2-mystery adventure book, one of those being a fully Seth original, and the other being Seth's update to the classic adventure Murder in Arcturus Station. Yeah, I should probably start working on a video on that soon. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of our stuff, such as game reviews or RPG philosophy, just hit that subscribe button. Till next time, gamers, you have a great day. One thing that I've always wanted for Call of Cthulhu was rules on how to play a Deep One hybrid. Either that or some sort of adventure where the player characters discover that they're Deep One hybrids and they're going to start a transformation. And how do they cope with that? Or maybe they try to do some adventure in order to stop that transformation from happening. Or maybe they've got some sort of adventure, like a final job they gotta do before their inevitable transformation into an inhuman monster.